Yo guys, what's up? Welcome to Quora with JC. Today is episode 7. So before I start, I just want to quickly plug in my book once again, Beyond the Black. Please check it out on Amazon. It's available in paperback and Kindle versions. And today we're going to look at some more Quora questions. Okay, the first question is, what's the most poisonous plant in the world? So I actually had to do a bit of research on that because I'm not really sure. But there is one website, and the top 3 are the rosary pea, water hemlock, and oleander. And I think it's interesting because I'm pretty sure that as a kid, etc., I've seen like the water hemlock quite a bit. I think like in Europe, it's quite widespread actually. I had no idea that it's so toxic though. So that's the thing. Like probably as kids, we played with things that are very toxic and dangerous, but we didn't even know about it. And so, yeah, now we do. But I'm not a specialist in botanics studies, so I don't know. But this is what I found on the internet. Okay, next question. I don't really have an answer to this one in particular, but I'll try to elaborate. So how hard has the COVID-19 lockdowns affected the Philippine people that were poor already before the pandemic? How do they survive? So again, I don't know the precise answer to this question. All I can talk about is my experience with the US. And if you look at the US, I think there's basically a lot of statistics that existed before the pandemic, which said that I think 80% of the people worked paycheck to paycheck, and that's before the pandemic. So of course, with it, I can't imagine the numbers right now. There's another number that came out quite recently, and it said, I think 50% of the American workforce, which is about 80 million people, in the past 15 months, at some point, they were on unemployment benefits. So some of them were on it for just a few weeks, some of them for a few months, and some of them for the entire duration, so 15 months. And that's what we're dealing with right now. So obviously, look, it doesn't mean that these people are kind of starving and dying, but it is really tough. Like, they can't pay the rent, etc. So I don't know. And the poor in the Philippines, I mean, these people live in shacks, basically, like very just poorly constructed, assembled together, kind of lumps of metal or something like that. And it is tough. It is very tough. Obviously, they rely on things like begging, etc. And obviously the people who have jobs and who have some money, they're suffering because there's not enough money going around. And so it's tough. It's tough. It's very tough. That's all I can say to this question. Next question, science question. Yay. If there's a planet exactly like Earth but 100 times bigger, would their humans be the same size as humans on Earth, or would they be proportioned to their planet? So personally, I don't really know about this, so I'm going to go by one of the answers, and there are many things here. First of all, if you have a bigger planet, it's natural that you have a bigger gravity. So like Mars, for example, is smaller than Earth, so the gravity there is smaller. Plus, with Mars, it's a bit tricky because basically there's this whole theory that Mars collided with some object before, and that just kind of ravaged it completely. So, but look at Jupiter, for example. Jupiter is a massive planet, and then the gravity there is massive, and also it has a huge magnetic field, etc. So yeah, there's that. But if you have a planet which is 100 times bigger than Earth, just the time, like, how do you deal with the spinning, etc.? Can you imagine? It's definitely not going to be a 24-hour day then. It's going to be much bigger, I guess. Or it would have to spin a lot faster to catch up with our 24-hour day cycle, which, I don't know, it sounds kind of difficult. Yeah, the general way it works here is that if you have low gravity, then you have big animals and plants. But it also depends, I think, on the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere. I think if you look back at the dinosaur era, for example, it says here that, yes, the gravity was 2 2.25 to 3 times weaker, it's possible by relative gravitational changes. The Earth was also closer to the Sun at the time, a little bit, and its gravity dissolved in the Sun's one. Okay, kind of difficult to understand, but okay, yeah, we can imagine that. But I think the oxygen does play a part as well. If there's a lot of oxygen in the atmosphere, I think the creatures just become bigger, and if there's less, then that's what we see today. Again, I'm not really entirely sure on this answer. You'd have to kind of check. Definitely don't quote me on that one, but that would be my general answer here. Next question is very short, and it's a philosophical question. Do we exist? So there's a lot of theories out there these days. For example, you got the simulation theory, that basically says that no, we actually are not real and that we are in a simulation. And this is a scenario which is like realistic, because if you look at games, video games today, for example, Assassin's Creed, you have this big environment, let's say around Boston area, which is like Assassin's Creed 3, or the second one, which takes place mostly in Italy. You go to places like Venice, etc. You got most of the buildings, you got kind of generated people walking around and talking, etc., etc. This is already, I mean, it looks pretty advanced, and that was already like, let's say 10 years ago, so in 2010 or something like that. This was a fairly advanced simulation for what it is, but you can imagine with computer powers, let's say you have technological advancements in the year 3000. So you have what we have today, and you add to that 1000 years of development. Can you imagine how far we can go? It's going to be unrecognizable. It's basically like going, maybe you can jump in time 50 years ago. You can take your little iPhone with you, and people will look at you with eyes wide open, because for them, they don't understand this. What is this? You have a mini computer with connection to the... Okay, back then you don't have the internet because there's no satellites really, but it would work just by itself, You can argue, make an argument. You can just make it work, at least show the home screen or something like that. So, this is 50 years ago. People will look at you with eyes wide open because you just showed them this new, completely almost alien technology to them. So you can imagine 1,000 years from now, we would have some other technologies which right now our eyes would be completely wide open and just full of surprise looking at it. So yeah, there's this whole thing. As far as the kind of philosophical question goes, I think this question goes back to the idea of consciousness. And this is where I kind of run into problems, because, for example, consciousness, the Cambridge Dictionary defines it as the state of understanding and realizing something. What is that explanation? That's not an explanation at all. And another explanation, this is from the Oxford Dictionary, is the state of being aware and responsive to one's surroundings. But excuse me, okay, a cat, for example, also is aware and responsive to the surroundings. Of course it is. Why would it not be? So, but if you look at theology and religion, they say basically like, consciousness is only inherent to human beings. Only we are capable of doing that, and that's why we're superior. The Bible always makes clear that humans are superior to animals, etc. Well, because Christianity also does not consider a human animal. It considers human as a creation of God, which is, on top of everything else. It's a layered approach. There was, in fact, a graphic which I had before. I might put it, if I find it, in the corner right now. But it basically said there was an egotistical approach where, the man is at the top of the pyramid and everything else is at the bottom. And there is an ecological approach where man is just part of nature. That's the best approach. So yeah, do we exist? Well, it's unclear, actually, to be honest with you. One of the answers here, one person says it only depends on the five senses, so taste, smell, etc., hearing. I disagree with that completely. This is not enough, and I mean, this is, I don't know, this is, I guess, one criteria you can judge it by, but I don't really agree with it. I don't think this is nothing. And for example, the sense of sight, we know how disappointing it is actually in reality. We don't see many wavelengths. We don't see microwave waves, etc. So it's extremely limited. Our spectrum of sight is very limited. So I definitely wouldn't rely on it to say, oh yeah, this is like accurate and we should just abide by it. So yeah, it's a complicated question. It goes into philosophy a lot, but yeah, I think that's my answer here to this question. Next question, we're just gonna go back to coronavirus for a bit here. Did China beat COVID-19? So it's a kind of difficult question to answer because on one hand, you have the Chinese government, which, you know, lies a lot and tries to hide evidence and wages a war on journalists, etc. On the other hand, is like, yes, it is possible because they're just a very different society to many other societies. So what is interesting about China is that, okay, again, you have to go by the official numbers, and that's what I'm saying. I kind of doubt the official data coming from China. But if it's true, let's assume it's true for a moment, then China is not even in the top 25 in terms of deaths by coronavirus. Whereas countries like the US is number one by far. India right now is catching up like crazy. In India right now, it's a disaster. It's really a disaster. It's really rising up really sharply and quickly. Maybe right now it's maybe third or second place even. But the difference is between China and the US, say, is that in China there is a very strong and efficient central government. That is true. That at least it's true. Like if the Chinese government decides to do something, it gets done. Whereas in the States, we have this ridiculous two-party system, which, you know, I argue is a one-party system in a way, but it's a system that is controlled by corporations for corporations. And in China, you don't have that. So over there, they're well prepared and they're well coordinated. That is true. I think that part is true. Like if they want to do something, it gets done. There's no argument. It just gets done. You can argue that the decision is bad. Yes, you can definitely argue that. But you can't argue at least about their efficiency, that it's very high. And the other thing is they have a very cooperative populace that followed the prescribed protocol to wear masks, social distance, and stay home, etc., etc. Although I did hear some crazy stories there that, you know, especially when it was just starting out, there were reports of the police going in and soldering certain doors to buildings so that the infected people could not get out. Look, for me, that sounds kind of alien and outlandish, so I don't know if that thing is true. If it is true, please, people in the comments, do comment about it. Do talk about your experience, because that is very interesting. That is like something out of a sci-fi movie or something. But yeah, that's in a nutshell what's going on in China. Last question for today. Dr. Fauci says we may not get back to our normal lives until the end of 2021, concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. What are your impressions about this statement? Well, my impression, first of all, is that Dr. Fauci has been a liar in the past. He's lied about the masks. You know, when the pandemic was starting, he said that you don't have to wear a mask. Then he tried to hide that by saying, oh, well, we were saying that because we were trying to save masks for our healthcare workers. And, you know, while I can see that argument being like valid, you could have just said that. You could have just said that, okay, yes, there is a problem with masks. We have a shortage and we are gonna prioritize the healthcare workers, because look, at the end of the day, if all the healthcare worker dies in America, the people have absolutely nowhere to go. So there is a certain amount of sacrifice, I guess, that was necessary. But you could have just said that, and you could also have told the regular people to at least make their own masks. That would have been better than nothing. And he didn't do that. He didn't do that. So now he says a bunch of things, and it's like, okay, well, look, he says the pandemic is going to be bad until the end of 2021. I'm not a doctor, but I can say the same thing, and I can say it for free. There you go. You got my advice, and it's just as good as his. Clearly, things are not going well this year. You can see the situation in India. Like I said before, in India right now, it's a catastrophe. They have, the latest numbers I've seen is that they have over 4,000 dead per day from the coronavirus. So that's very scary. It's a very bad situation there. Yeah, it's getting better, but it depends where you are. Some countries is going to be better than others. That's basically my response here. Okay, thanks a lot for watching today's show. I hope you kind of learned a lot of things, and definitely today there were a few things that I'm not sure about. So if you have more information, then make sure that you comment, and I will make sure to incorporate that at some point in my future shows. So thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye-bye.